It was the fastest ship of the time, so the White Star Line Company wanted that this ship should reach New York in 6 days, and people should know about the speed along with the grandeur of Titanic. For this reason, Captain Smith of this company and Titanic had received instructions to run the ship at full speed. It had not been long since Titanic was built, and neither had its safety tests and trials been done, but still Titanic was being prepared for a long journey, and there was a big reason for this. Actually, White Star Line Company had another ship named Olympic which looked like Titanic but was a little smaller than it. For this reason, Olympic ship was called Titanic Sister. On March 1912, Olympic ship had a problem. For this reason, Olympic came to the port in emergency for repair. Now these ships are so big that it takes many months to repair them. So because of this reason, the business of White Star Line Company gets closed in these months, so to continue its business, the company decided to launch its new ship Titanic in the very next month, i.e. in April. Now, because this was the first voyage of Titanic, it was necessary to have some experienced people in the crew of Titanic. Due to this, some crew members of Titanic were removed and some crew members of Olympic were included in the crew of Titanic. There was an officer of Titanic named David Blair. He was removed and an officer of Olympic was appointed on duty in his place. So when David Blair was leaving the ship and going to his home, he mistakenly brought the key of his locker with him. And unfortunately, the only telescope present on Titanic was also locked in the same locker. This small mistake made by David Blair later sinks Titanic. Finally, the time came when on April 10, 1912, Titanic set off on its first historic journey. Captain Smith knew very well that a lot of icebergs are found in the sea during these months of the year. Due to this, sensing the danger, he left the direct route of the northern route and chose this slightly longer route of the southern route. Actually, icebergs are small mountains of ice present in the sea. These mountains of ice break off from the glacier and come to the middle of the sea with the waves of the sea. If you look at this map, and these small mountains of ice break off from Greenland and reach the Atlantic Ocean through this route. So, in this region, a lot of icebergs break off and come in the month of April. But the good thing is that it takes about 2 years for these icebergs to reach the Atlantic Ocean, and by the time they reach the Atlantic Ocean, those icebergs melt and merge into the seawater. Only the icebergs that are very big can come to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So, to avoid the danger of icebergs, Captain Smith chose a route a little farther away from this route instead, where the chances of finding icebergs are very less. This was the time when there was no special technology on the ship to see icebergs, etc. Due to this, there is a crow's nest at a little height in front of the ship. It is also called the lookout point. In this crow's nest, 1 or 2 people are always sitting with binoculars who keep looking far ahead to see if there is any obstacle in front of the ship which may collide with it, and when these ships move in the water. All these ships keep sending messages to each other through wireless radio about what obstacle is there at which place. When Titanic had reached halfway, it gets the first warning of iceberg from Corona ship. This iceberg was still 1 day away from Titanic. Senior Officer Jack Phillips on Titanic was operating this wireless radio system and was in touch with other ships. On the afternoon of April 14th, Titanic gets the second warning of iceberg. Wireless operator Jack Phillips warns the captain of the ship about these warnings. On this first voyage of Titanic, Titanic's owner Joseph Bruce was also present. When Captain Smith told the ship's owner Bruce Smay about the warnings of icebergs, Bruce Smay ignored these warnings. Because he believed that finding icebergs in the sea is a common thing and the ship in which he is sitting is a strong and never sinking ship, and Bruce did not want that due to these warnings the speed of the ship should decrease, and the ship should reach late from its scheduled time. After this, Titanic gets warnings of iceberg 5 more times. And the last warning that Titanic got was like the one received by the SS Californian ship. It was night and unfortunately the moon had not risen in the sky that day. Due to which the visibility was very low and the people sitting in the cross nest did not even have binoculars so that they could see the obstacle coming from a distance. They were able to see. Titanic was moving at its full speed of 40 kilometers per hour and Titanic was still 2 hours away from the iceberg. In the pitch darkness, Titanic was moving ahead, cutting through the seawater at such a great speed. Without caring about the fact that on the path it was moving, there was a huge iceberg in front of it. It was 11:30 at night, and now Titanic was just 6 kilometers away from the iceberg, and at the speed at which Titanic was moving, it was going to reach the iceberg in the next 10 minutes. In the crow's nest of Titanic, 2 brave men, Frederick Fatt and Reginald Lee, were staring at the obstacles coming in front of the ship in the bitter cold and the dark of the night. The problem for both of them was that wherever they were sitting, they had to face the cold wind, due to which tears would come out of their eyes. They did not even have a telescope, due to which they were not able to see things that were too far away. In low light, it was not possible to see things that were far away from the eyes. At 11:49 p.m., Frederick Fleet, sitting in the cross nest, saw that there was an iceberg in front. Without delay, he rang the bell 3 times and immediately called the officers on the bridge and informed them that there was an iceberg in front. Quickly turned the ship to the left side. As soon as the first officer, William, on the bridge heard this warning, he immediately took action and started the engines in reverse at full speed to stop the ship. And the ship started turning to the left side quickly. But now it was too late. The speed of the ship was so high that even after starting the reverse engine in such a short time, it could not be stopped, and the ship was so big that it could not be turned immediately in a short distance. To a large extent, the path of the Titanic was changed, but still at 11:40 p.m., the front right part of the Titanic collided with an iceberg. This collision was so strong that it shook all the passengers present on the ship. Unfortunately, Titanic's double-bottom hull was of no use, as the impact with the iceberg was on the side of the ship where the hull was only single-layered. When Captain Smith inspected the damage, he found that 6 compartments of the ship were damaged and water was filling them rapidly. Captain Smith was shocked to see this, because the ship could float only till 4 compartments were filled. But water filling in 6 compartments meant that the ship, which was till now considered unsinkable, would now sink. 20 minutes had passed since the collision, and at 12 o'clock in the night, Captain Smith asked the crew to send distress signals so that any ship in the vicinity could come to their rescue, and wireless operator Jack Phillips started sending distress signals continuously. But unfortunately, there was no ship nearby that could catch the distress signals being sent by Titanic. 6 compartments were filled with water, and water now started flowing over the deck. Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be launched into the sea, and all the lifeboats were taken out. Unfortunately, at that time there were only 20 lifeboats on the Titanic, and the capacity of one lifeboat was only 65 people. Only about 1,200 people could be saved by 20 lifeboats, and there were more than 2,200 people on the ship. In a hurry, only 27 to 28 people were being sent in the lifeboats that were being launched initially, and the lifeboards were being filled only half. The protocol was that women and children would be sent to the lifeboards first. There were still some people on the ship who believed that this ship could never sink, and they were completely relaxed. Here Jack Phillips was continuously sending distress signals, and fortunately his distress signal was received by a ship nearby, Carpathia, and at 12:30, a message came from the Carpathia ship that they were coming to rescue the people on the Titanic. But unfortunately, the Carpathia ship was still about 107 kilometers away from Titanic, and even if Carpathia ran at its full speed, it would still have to wait for Titanic to reach the shore. It was going to take 4 hours to reach Titanic. Now the question is whether Titanic will be able to survive for 4 hours. As the water was filling in the front part of Titanic, the ship was tilting forward and sinking in the water. When the tilt of Titanic started increasing, there was panic among the people. Now everyone understood that Titanic will sink now, and everyone started trying to make their own space to board the lifeboats to save their lives. More priority was being given to saving the first-class people in the lifeboats, and at 1:50 when the last lifeboat was lowered from the ship. Even after that, more than 1,500 people were left on the ship. There was an atmosphere of fear all around. Those who could swim were jumping into the seawater. But at this time, the sea was also showing cruelty. The seawater was as cold as -2 degrees Celsius. Any person could survive in such cold water for a maximum of 15 to 30 minutes. Some people accepted death and were ready to embrace it. But the crew members of the ship were still sending distress signals in the hope of help. They were firing flares in the sky so that the attention of any ship nearby could be drawn towards them and they could save them, but no ship came to rescue them. The speed of water filling in Titanic was increasing and Titanic started sinking very fast. The front part of Titanic had completely entered the water and the rear part started rising above the water. Now the captain of the ship, Smith, also told his crew to save their lives, but Jack Phillips was still busy sending distress signals without caring about his life. As long as there was electricity on the ship, Phillips was maintaining contact with the only ship coming to help them, Carpathia. Captain Smith decided not to leave his ship. When the front part of the ship was completely submerged in water, darkness engulfed the ship due to a short circuit. The Atlantic Ocean was echoing with the screams of people. The rear part of the ship was completely in the air and the pressure increased so much that the Titanic broke into two parts, and at 2:20 in the night, the RMS Titanic sank into the lap of the Atlantic Ocean. The unsinkable ship sank into the depths of the ocean in just 2 hours and 40 minutes. Some of the 1,500 more people who were on board drowned with it, and some were killed by the cold water of the sea. Captain Smith remained on his ship till the end. About 2 hours after the sinking of the Titanic, the Carpathia ship reached the next morning to rescue the survivors, and only 706 people survived this accident. 3 days later, on April 18, 1912, at 9:30 in the night, the Carpathia reached New York, where 40,000 people were waiting for the Carpathia in heavy rain. After this accident, many questions arose whose answers people are still searching for. But when it was investigated, a surprising thing came to light that when Titanic sank, every person on it could have been saved. Because there was another ship just 37 kilometers away from Titanic which could have come and helped on time. This was the same SS Californian ship which had sent the last warning of iceberg to Titanic. But what was the reason that SS Californian ship did not go to help Titanic, even though they could see the flares being released in the sky and the horizon? So in the investigation it was found that seeing the dangers of iceberg in the sea, the Californian ship decided not to move forward at night, and they had also turned off their wireless radio at night, due to which they could not receive any distress signal from Titanic. When the crew of SS Californian saw the rockets and flares flying from Titanic, they informed the captain of Californian, Stanley Lord, about this. Stanley Lord asked his crew to send signals to Titanic using Morse lamp, and the crew of SS Californian kept sending signals to Titanic using Morse lamp, but perhaps there was so much hurry on Titanic that no one saw the Morse signal coming from SS Californian. Actually, at that time, Morse code was used to contact each other's ships through dashes and dots from such lamps. If only the radio of Californian ship had been on, then perhaps so many lives would not have been lost in that accident. Years were passing since this accident of Titanic. But one question that was bothering people was that how did that ship, which was called an unsinkable ship, sink? The answer to this question could be found only when the wreckage of the Titanic ship was found. A lot of research was done, but the Atlantic Ocean had hidden the Titanic in its lap in such a way that its wreckage could not be found. More than 70 years had passed searching for the wreckage of RMS Titanic in the depths of the ocean. Then in September 1985, for the first time a glimpse of the wreckage of Titanic was seen. American oceanographer Robert Bead was the person who discovered the wreckage of Titanic, and since the wreckage of Titanic was found, many searches have been done on it till date, but the research done on the wreckage of Titanic solved the mystery of why and how this unsinkable ship sank. The oceanographer was shocked when he saw the wreckage of Titanic because Titanic was broken into two parts at the bottom of the ocean. The front part of the ship is in very good condition, but the rear part is in such a bad condition that looking at it seems that this is not the second part of Titanic. And the rear part is about 2,000 feet away from the front part. After a lot of research, it was found that when Titanic was built, the rivets that were used to strengthen the hull of Titanic were not made of steel, but of cast iron. Here the company tried to cut costs while building the ship. Now since cast iron is softer than steel, due to this, at the place where the iceberg hit the body of Titanic, the rivets opened due to pressure and the plates connected to each other shifted from their place from where water got a way to enter inside. Today, the wreckage of Titanic is losing its existence while fighting with the environment in the depths of the sea, and it is believed that in the coming few years these traces of Titanic will also disappear from the sea. This incident of Titanic was really a heart-wrenching incident, but about 60 years after the sinking of Titanic, a similar heart-wrenching incident happened in the hills of Indies in which a plane crashed on a desolate hill thousands of feet above the ground. And some people who survived the crash had no food in the temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius and no means to escape the cold. To stay alive, they had to eat the dead bodies of their own family members. In fact, the story of Flight 571 is heart-wrenching. You can see the story of Flight 571 in this video shown on the screen. I will meet you there.